Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this special 110 of Petey's Awesome Guest Panel. Now, before we introduce tonight's special, iconic, legendary name, I would like to introduce this roundhouse of co-hosts I have for this evening. First off, a trainee at the Professional Wrestling School, Reality Wrestling, Mr. Darius Jojo Givens.
Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you all.
It's good to have you, Darius.
Good to have you be.
Likewise, sir. On the other end, we got Batman and Robin enthusiast and superhero fan from jolly old England, Mr. Kwame Jacobs.
I'm back.
We love having you here. Introducing in another co-host for this evening, we have a specialist in the United States Army, and that is Mr. Christopher Petey.
Oh, excuse me.
He owns your trademark, right, Chris? And also join us.
Yeah, there it is.
And also joining us, we have a special celebrity guest co-host. We have voice actress and star of Power Rangers Lost Galaxy, Miss Nancy Van Eiderstein.
Huge fan.
Aren't we all?
Oh,
Right.
gosh, yes.
And finally, we have for the first time ever, and the host of the podcast show Clover Relief Radio, Mr. Ian Boothby.
Hello, everybody. It's nice to be here.
Great to have you here, man. Now, before we introduce tonight's special legendary name, I just want to read this gentleman's accolades because this man is a real-life superhero, a real-life boy wonder. No pun intended. He is the youngest. This is the man who is the youngest professional ice skater in the world. He is also one of the youngest real estate agents in California history. A man who placed achievement in the top 3% in the U.S. Math and Science test in UCLA. The founder of the first annual Burt Global Batusi for Peace Day. He was also a Grand Marshal for the Huntington Beach Parade, which was the largest 4th of July parade in all the nation. He was honored with for a superhero hot dog by the Hollywood legendary restaurant, the world's famous Pink Hot Dog Restaurant. He is a black belt in the martial arts. He was inducted into the International Karate and Kickboxing Hall of Fame in October of 2015. In addition to that, this man was named Harvard's Man of the Year. Also, I would like to say he's the founder, along with his wife, Tracy, he is the founder of Gentle Giants Rescue and Adoption Agency and Gentle Giants pet cat and dog food products. He was tested by the American Medical Society in the Beverly Hills and clocked 30,000 words per minute with a 90% comprehension when the average human reading level was 240 words per minute with a 40% comprehension. And of course, lastly, he received his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in January 2020. My guess at this time is the legendary, iconic, and holy G-Forces Batman himself, Mr. Burt Ward. Burt, welcome, sir. How are you today?
Hello, citizens.
Holy G-Forces, glad to have you. Now, before we get into the first question for this evening, I just want to say, like, we all are dog and animal people, and we just want to commend you for your work, for what you do for dog and cat advocacy.
Well, thank you. I'd like to mention the fact that for the last 30 years, my wife and I have operated the world's largest giant breed dog rescue, and we've rescued more than 15,500 dogs, everyone that would have been put to death if we hadn't been there to save them, and everyone we found a safe, loving home. And in the course of 30 years of rescuing so many animals that otherwise would have been put to sleep, we developed a very special food called Gentle Giants that now is nationally all across America in Target, in Petco stores, H-E-B, Stater Brothers. And this food helps dogs live as long as 27 and a half years. We also have Gentle Giants cat food, cat and kitten food, and our cats are living up to 32 years. This is unheard of. And how we're able to do it is by a very special formula that is all non-GMO ingredients, no genetically modified organisms in the food, which unfortunately in our country, 90+% of all the food supply has already been genetically modified. So we have to buy from a much smaller percentage. That together with the fact that we have the right protein, and we have a special feeding and care program where we teach people how to feed and care for your dogs. So we have a lot of people In fact, recently we were contacted by a man in Arizona whose dog has been eating our food for 14 and a half years, and his dog is 29 and a half years old. If he makes it till January 3rd, will be 30 years old. And as of now, the dog seems to be in perfect shape.
Very cool, and it's very inspiring too, sir.
That's amazing. We definitely have to get more of your information afterwards, because I think that's just astounding. Because I mean, especially with saving like 15,000 animals, because there used to be some pounds where they would only hold the dogs for like 7 days, and that's hardly
They
enough
don't.
time.
No, they don't even hold him for that. They don't even hold him for that. The maximum is 5 days, and there are some shelters that if you leave them there, they unfortunately kill them before you leave the parking lot. It's a very serious matter. And we've been fortunate to rescue so many dogs, and fortunate that we're able to keep them healthy and alive so long. And just to give you an idea, it's not just about how long these animals, our dogs and cats, are living, but here at our rescue, and I've got 50 in my house right now, 50 of them, we have no illness here, zero. Our dogs and cats are so healthy. The only time they go to a veterinarian is every 3 years for a rabies vaccination. No illness whatsoever, and their quality of life is superb.
That's amazing, and bless you, sir, for doing that. And now, before we dive into the questions, though, I just want to say 3 things. First of all, I want to give a special shout out and thank you for a man who made this very possible, and that is Mr. Roger Niels. I mean, Mr. Niels, if you're watching this, you're a wonderful man. Thank you so much. I also want to say to Mr. Ward that my dad, my grandma, and my grandfather are a huge fan of you. They watched you back in the day, and they're just huge fans. In fact, both my dad and my grandfather used to collect old vintage 1966 Batman and Robin memorabilia.
Oh, that's terrific. Well, we're still on television in reruns all across the country every single day, and millions of people worldwide still see Batman in reruns. And so you be sure and tell your dad, and if your grandfather's still around, that they have excellent taste.
Thank you, sir. And my grandmother also loved, my grandma was a huge fan of Robin back in the day.
Okay, sounds good to me.
Okay, we're going to dive into the question. This one's going to be your typical cliche question, and that is, how and when did you get both your first start and break in the acting business? Take us there.
Okay. Here's in my case, I was going to UCLA as a student at UCLA, and I was also studying. I wanted to be an actor, and I was studying professionally. Besides at UCLA, also professionally with coaches in Hollywood. And on the weekends, I was helping my father sell real estate. And in my particular case, a very prominent producer came to one of the houses that I was at, and he introduced himself, and I told him I wanted to be an actor. And I asked him kind of brazenly, "Hey, I know you're here to look at this house, but would you be willing to spend 5 minutes and let me do a scene for you?" He said, "Well, all right." And I did that. And he said, "That's pretty good. I'll tell you what, I'm going to send you to an agent." And he did. He arranged for me to meet an agent who told me, "Hey, I can't get work for the actors I've got. I would never take anybody new. And the only reason I'm taking you is because this producer called me and I have to do it." I said, "Well, okay." He said, "Well, don't expect to work for a year. And if you do, you'll probably get one line." I said, "Okay." So I left there kind of with, a little bit deflated. But it was a couple of weeks later that someone from his office called and said, "Hey, there's something going on over at 20th Century Fox. They're seeing a ton of young guys. Go over there tomorrow. We got an appointment. You got to drive on past, be there at 4:30. And I said, "Okay." And I said, "What it's about?" They said, "We don't know. It's just they're seeing a lot of young guys." So the next day, I went over to 20th Century Fox. Sure enough, they had a pass for me, and they directed me to go to an office where I went in there, and a lot of young guys there. And eventually I got my turn. And in speaking to the casting director, he only asked me a question or two and said, "Would you like to meet the executive producer?" I said, "Sure," right? I mean, doesn't everybody get to meet the executive producer? No, but I didn't know that because I'd never been on an interview before. So he sent me to another office where I met the executive producer. And you got to understand that so many actors are it's so hard to get apart that they're used to constant rejection. And, it's not as though you're selling another product, you're selling yourself. So if somebody doesn't like your product, which is you, it hurts a lot more than if you're trying to sell, Fuller hairbrushes or something. So but I had never been on an interview, so therefore I wasn't damaged. I wasn't, defensive. I just walked right in and I grabbed his hand and said, "Hello, sir." And he was like, "Oh my gosh, who is this guy?" And he looked at me. This is William Dozier, executive producer, and he said, "You're kind of big for this part." I said, "Oh, but sir, I promise you, I won't grow anymore." And he laughed. I mean, how could you promise somebody you're not going to grow anymore? And he said, "Would you like to do a screen test?" I said, "Sure." I mean, I figured, doesn't everybody get to do a screen test? No, but I didn't know that. It was my first interview. So he arranged for me to do a screen test. Again, I had no idea what I was trying out for. And at the screen test, I was handed, so it was a couple of weeks later, I was handed a single page of dialogue. And there was the name Bruce on it with paragraphs, which meant Bruce Wayne, but I didn't know that, just said Bruce. And then Dick, which would normally refer to Dick Grayson, but it just was Dick and only with paragraphs. And they said, "Would you like to meet the actor you're going to read with?" I said, "Sure." So I was introduced to Adam West. We sat down next to each other for a couple of minutes. And within 5 minutes, the two of us were laughing. He was just the funniest guy in the world, most amazing sense of humor. And we had instant chemistry, which is something it's rare. And so I did the reading, and when I first came in, I'd done some martial arts. I broke a board with my hand and stuff like that. And so I did the reading with Adam, and they said, "Okay, we're done." I said, "Wonderful. Well, thank you very much." And I started to leave. They said, whoa, we're done with this scene. We're not done with your screen test. I said, "Oh, well, is there something else?" They said, "Yeah." They said, "We want you to walk all the way over to the other side of the sound stage, and there's two wardrobe guys there in a trailer waiting to help you get dressed." And I heard that. I said, "Well, no disrespect, but I'm perfectly capable of dressing myself." And they said, No, you don't understand. You just go over there and you'll see." So I walked all the way over to the other side of the soundstage. It's like walking 3 city blocks. They're so big. And sure enough, in the trailer, these two guys, and they had this like huge mattress and all of this stuff. And I said, "Am I going to put some of this on?" And they said, "No, you're going to put all of it on." I said, "What?" And they helped me get dressed in what has got to be the most uncomfortable, painful outfit you could ever imagine. Everything itched or pinched or pulled or occupied or whatever it was uncomfortable. And I could hardly walk in. I could hardly see out of the mask. You'd only see straight ahead. You couldn't see down, which I nearly broke my neck coming out of the trailer, trying to find the step. But I remember turning to these two guys, and I'm in agony with this costume. And I said, "Well, I'm an optimistic person. And the good thing here is probably after another 15 or 20 minutes, I'll never have to wear this costume again." Famous last words. And then I went to the set, and then I saw my new friend, Adam West. He's in this outfit. I had never read a Batman comic book. I didn't know about a Batman existing. I'd only read Superman and Superboy comic books. So seeing him dressed like that, I had no idea what I was looking at. Maybe this was some kind of Shakespearean period piece or something. I didn't know what this was about. Nobody told me, but I did the interview. And I did the reading with him. And probably about 4 or 5 weeks later, well, first of all, every week for the next week, I kept getting calls from the studio. "Well, what's your shoe size?" or "What's your hat size?" "Well, I don't wear a hat." "Well, go get your head measured." "Well, where do I go to get my head measured?" I mean, these things are things that were totally foreign to me. But anyway, I got all these questions. And then at the end of about 6 weeks, these same agents called me and said, "Hey, we want you to come in and sign contracts." I said, "Fantastic. Now I'm going to be represented by a real Hollywood agent." So I went there, and they said, "Here, come in this room and sit down." And I looked at this contract, and the thing was like an inch thick. I said, "Wow, these are agency contracts that are that thick?" But when I looked down at it, it said 20th Century Fox. So I got up and I went to the door and said, "Oh, no, I'm sorry. You've given me the wrong contracts. I'm supposed to be signing the agency contracts." They said, no, 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 those are the right contracts. I said, well, this says 20th Century Fox. I don't know if I got the part or not. They said, well, of course you got the part. Didn't you know? I said, no. They said, well, you mean the studio didn't tell you? I said, no. And then several days later, I went to the studio. And they said, you mean your agents didn't tell you? And I said, no. So I had 4 of the last 6 weeks, I had the part and didn't even know I had it.
That's incredible. And also, I just want to say, I am so sorry that you had to go through that wardrobe problem. I'm so sorry you went through that.
Oh, you should feel sorry for the 3 years I wore the costume. I mean, man was not built for tights.
Oh man. And also, like, I just want to say before we ask the next question though, this is a special episode too, because this is the first time we actually have a hero and a villain on the show, because Nancy actually portrayed a villain on the Power Ranger series, Mr. Ward. So we have a superhero and a villain in one interview right now.
There you go.
Kwame, your next question. Go ahead, buddy.
Were there any preparations, methods you would do before any particular role?
You know, can I tell you something? I had an unusual situation growing up. When I was a little boy, I daydreamed of being a superhero. Not a Batman and Robin, because I never heard of him, but Superboy. And my mother, I had a tricycle. I was like 3 years old with a tricycle. You know, that's where it's like a little bike, only it's got 3 wheels. And she used to put a bath towel around my neck, held together with a clothespin, so I could pretend that I was Superboy. And, you know, and it was kind of interesting, you know, what an ironic kind of thing, right? Later on, because I was kind of a quiet kid in school, I was kind of very good student, but I was kind of by myself a lot. And in the afternoons, I would come home by myself after school, and for hours, I would take this ball that I had and kick it against the wall and run and kick it back. And it was just something to do, but I daydreamed when I was doing that. And I constantly daydreamed about being a superhero. So the reason this ties into answering your question is, when I got the role, I didn't, quote, put on an act. In fact, when I was hired, the executive producer said this to me. He said, you know, Burt, we've interviewed 1,100 young actors for this role, and we picked you. And would you like to know why we picked you? And I said, yes, sir. He said, because in our mind, forgetting television, if there really was a Robin, I mean, like the real thing, we think you personally would be it. So we don't want you to, quote, act. We actually want you to do 2 things. 1, be yourself, and 2, be enthusiastic. Those are the exact words. And for me, being enthusiastic is like breathing. I mean, that's the easiest thing in the world. So for all the time I did the role, no director ever told me how to say a line. Never told Adam, either one of us. We just naturally had fun with it. And I just did what I had spent hundreds and maybe thousands of hours daydreaming as a young guy growing up through school and then high school. And that's what I did. Every single scene. Adam and I, we had such a chemistry. I'm telling you, chemistry can be everything. And if you think about it, in history, the great comic duos, because really our Batman and Robin were comic. We did it seriously for the kids, but it made it doubly funny for the adults and the teenagers and the college kids. But what we did was very satirical. And the great comic duos in history, okay, have always had great contrast. For example, Laurel and Hardy, one skinny, one heavy. Abbott and Costello, one tall, one short. Ed McMahon and Johnny Carson, you know, on The Tonight Show. All the great comic duos have had contrast. The natural thing that Adam and I did that made it so easy was he thought of himself like he thought he should have been like a prime minister, like a Winston Churchill. I mean, he had such grand ideas. And the more grand he thought of himself and the slower he talked, the faster I talked. And so everything we did was played in contrast to each other, and it always worked.
It's incredible. And would you say also, sir, that Laurel and Hardy would be an example of like a contrast?
Oh, absolutely. Look at Laurel with a high little voice, and Hardy with a deeper voice. One very slender, and the other very heavy set. I mean, and you know, you could just look at them and you'd laugh. I mean, you just same Hobbit, Abbott and Costello. One giant, one tiny. It always has been great contrast makes for great comedy.
I totally agree, sir. And I want to ask you this question too, because I actually asked this question to Nancy when I interviewed her, and that is the raw emotion question. And that is, I'll put you in a scenario right now, Mr. Ward. Like if you and I were doing a scene together, like whether it's a serious one or whatever, and the scene requires us to get into a heated argument, and I approach you and I say, Mr. Ward, and I would say, Mr. Ward, because I have so much amount of respect for you. I say, Mr. Ward, this scene requires us to get into this heated confrontation. Now, I know it's going to sound very weird of me to ask, but I had an idea where, like, if you could lambaste me so hard that you could actually, like, lay into me, like, so hard that you can make me cry in frustration, not only to, like, that way we can tell a story, but also make it believable to the audience. If you were approached with this type of method by any co-star of yours, what would your reaction be and what would you say?
Well, I would pick something that I knew would affect them. You know, I mean, people, different strokes for different folks, but you know, I mean, and of course, you know, in a professional world, you do it in front of the camera, you do it when you're called upon, but on a personal basis, I would never really mean any evil or hatred towards that person. But they would understand that during the scene, I mean, look on Batman. I'll tell you something that's similar, not exactly the same, but the stunt guys would, you know, we had to do these fight scenes. And I'm a black belt in karate, and I love doing the fight scenes, okay? But some of these stunt men, you know, now remember, they do all kinds of stunts, not just fight scenes. So some of them might not be that good at a fight scene and might not pull a punch and actually hit me. You see what I mean? When they're not supposed to. But so in my case, if I got hit, I hit them right back. Okay. and so there you are in a real situation on camera, in a real, that became a actual physical fight, brief, very brief, but real action. And so, you know, those circumstances can happen, but I never try to really hurt anybody. You know, the more you learn, the more you realize how special life is and how fragile life is. And my wife and I are very dedicated to doing kind things. And we both have the attitude that we're all on this planet a very short period of time, and we want to leave this planet better off than we found it. So I never really, ever really want to hurt anybody. You know, there's a lot of people out there that might deserve something, but I'm not here to judge them. But what we do try to do is live each day that we can be proud of at the end of the day.
God bless you, sir. And like I said in the opening intro, like you are a real life superhero, both on screen and off screen, especially what you do for pets all over. I mean, I myself, I mean, Darius is a professional dog groomer, like Chris, Ian, and Nancy, and Kwame. They're all animal people too. I have two turtles myself, which I'm very devoted to. I have two tortoises, one Herman, one tortoise. I actually want to get like would you be interested in discussing more about your pet food line of Gentle Giants project?
Well, yeah, just in a nutshell, you have to understand that pet food companies are in the business to make money. And there's nothing wrong with that, but some of them do things that actually, to make more money, actually harms the animals. And we have found that a number of the pet food companies put a lot of fat into the food, and they coat the outside of the dog's kibble with animal fat. And what that does, it actually affects the brain of the animal to believe it's always hungry, so that they'll eat more food to make that person buy more dog food. And it shortens the animal's life because, you know, there's a famous phrase, stress kills. And if you keep an animal stressed and always hungry, it's going to shorten their lifespan. Whereas we take the opposite approach. We want every living creature to live its maximum potential. And the way you do that, you have to have really good food that has got no fillers or chemicals, no GMOs, no added excessive fat, no excessive protein. It's like there's so many things that you don't want to put in that would make a dog eat more. And we do it because in our case, for my wife and I with our company, we don't take a dime in salary. We take nothing. This is all about helping animals live longer and healthier. So it is that kind of approach, our Gentle Giants pet food, that we've taken, and it really works. I mean, I get emails from people that their dogs are in their 20s, still running around like puppies. And again, there's no magic to this. It's all science.
That's incredible, and especially too, like most dog and cat food, don't they contain like some kind of GMO? Like, did I say it correctly?
Yes, that is genetically modified organisms. Well, let me give you a human example. When I was talking about fat content, you know, about 12 years ago, there was a man that went into a McDonald's in Ohio, and he ate breakfast, lunch, dinner, and a snack at that same McDonald's for an entire month. He gained 55 pounds and almost died. They made a movie about him called Super Size Me.
Yep.
There you are. A lot of people saw that movie. It's the same principle. A high fat content affects the brain to make you feel you're always hungry, and you put on excessive fat, but it's not nutrition. It is like a lack of nutrition. So that's what happens to dogs with all the animal fat that's added to their food, all with a goal of trying to make them eat more for the company to sell more dog food. Very unconscionable. We don't do that.
Mr. Ward, maybe I'm giving a wrong example. That's why I'm going to ask you, because you know more about this than me. Like, but would you say like the equivalent of like putting the GMOs in like dog and cat food is like the equivalent of like trans fats in like human food, because it just makes people want to eat more?
Well, yes, but no. GMOs is a different problem. Let me explain about that. When farmers grow crops in the past, they would, no matter what they grew, it could be fruits, vegetables, rice, whatever they grew, that when they were growing it, pests, bugs, and things like that would attack the plants. And if they sprayed a pesticide on the plant, half the time it would kill the plant. And therefore, the farmer at the end of the season only had half a crop, and his family had to live, you know, tighten the belt and all of that, because they weren't making, you know, their money that they could. And in 1996, a company that makes Roundup, that one that, you know, you hear about all these lawsuits for suing because it's cancer causing, that company came up with a product called Roundup Ready Crops. And what they did is they took that Roundup, the same thing that causes cancer, and they mixed it into the DNA of just about everything we eat. So when a farmer now grows, let's take that example, rice again. He grows rice, pests will attack the plant, and they spray the Roundup, the weed killer, onto the plant. It kills the pest, but it doesn't kill the plant. And that all of that farmer's product is sold to the market. Farmer comes out terrific, but who doesn't come out terrific? The animals that eat it, because they have absorbed the pesticide into the food. And now you're feeding an animal that doesn't have an immune system as good as a human being. And that animal is coming down with 60 different ailments, including cancers. And in fact, on our website, gentlegiantsdogfood.com, I would invite your listeners to go to our website, gentlegiantsdogfood.com. We have a menu at the top of every page. And the second menu item says non-GMO ingredients in Gentle Giants dog food. And if you click on that page and you go to it, there's a video. Now, we didn't produce the video. We took it from a very prestigious research organization. But in a nutshell, this 8-minute video, I'm going to just tell you why it's so important for pet owners, is because everyone interviewed in that video is a prominent veterinarian. And here's what almost every single one says. 10, 15, 20 years ago, they would see one dog or cat a month that had cancer. Now, with genetically modified organisms in more than 90% of the food supply in our country, that every single day, 1 out of every 2 dogs and cats they see already has cancer. Dogs and cats are dying like flies, okay, from cancers caused by the genetically modified organisms in the food we feed them.
You're right. We gotta. It's science and nature can be very scary when you combine those two. Like especially when, like you said, with GMOs. Like it's horrible. Like you said, they mix in stuff that could cause like cancer related stuff. It's scary stuff.
Exactly. So we because all we care about is that animals live longer and healthier. And our giant breeds, you got to understand, these breeds, when we started rescuing them in 1994, almost 30 years ago, that these dogs, some of the breeds only live 6 to 8 years. Some of them live 7 to 9 years. And they are, the bigger they are, believe it or not, the more gentle they are, because they're not intimidated by a human being, that some of them are bigger than human beings. So when we would see these big, gentle giants and we would lose one, it would tear us up, my wife and I. And that's when we vowed if we could find a way to help them live longer and healthier, we would. And that's the first thing we developed, was our special feeding and care program. For example, if you have an animal, most people that have a dog or a cat, well, let's take in case of a dog, they'll feed that dog twice a day. We don't do that. That shortens their life. We feed our dogs a minimum of 5 or more times a day, smaller, more frequent meals. Another thing is dogs' bodies wear out much faster than humans. So we recommend that people elevate their food and water dishes to a specific height for every dog, which is when the dog comes over to eat or drink, the top of the food or the top of the water is basically where the neck joins the body, so that all they do is tilt their head down to eat or drink, never lean down. You'll see all these television commercials on the air, and they selling dog food, and they have a big Great Dane come over and eat off the ground. That poor dog has to lean way down to get the food. Then they come up and chew and swallow, and then lean way down to get the water. And when you do that every day, up and down and up, and you're prematurely wearing their bodies off. And we don't do that. All of these things, we conserve energy so it lasts longer. We conserve the life force in an animal so it lasts longer. That's why people, when they call us and they say, I just went to your website and I don't understand. I see all these videos with dogs running around like puppies in their 20s, and my 8-year-old dog is having trouble getting up and he's having trouble walking, and that doesn't seem fair. Well, I ask him, are you feeding our food? Well, no. Are you elevating the food and water? Well, no. Are you feeding 5 or more times a day? No. Well, then what do you expect?
Exactly. What do you expect?
All science. Okay. And because we've had so many dogs, think about it. We have had an average of 50 dogs in our house 7 days a week for 30 years. 30 years. Can you imagine 24/7 with 50 dogs in your house? Don't you think after 30 years of doing it every day, night and day, that you would learn a lot? Well, that's why we know so much, because we've lived with it.
You know so much.
Yes, and like, God bless you, and kudos for what you do for cats and dogs. Like, it's just very inspirational, sir.
Yeah. Well, we can have fun and stuff like that, and we do. But at the same time, I'll tell you, like, I'm sitting 15 feet away from a 26-year-old dog right now. And if you were to ask a veterinarian, oh, have you ever seen a dog 26 years old? Well, no, of course not. They don't live that long. Well, I've got them. And in fact, I'll tell you the best thing of all. About 4 months ago, we had a gentleman from Arizona contact us. He said that his dog has been eating our food for 15 years. And I said, great. And he said, he says, I watch on your videos and I see you got dogs 27, but he says, I can beat that. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, I got my dog when he was 6 weeks old from an animal shelter. And that was 29 and a half years ago. And he's got the medical records. He adopted him when there was just a 6-week-old puppy. And if that dog makes it till January 3rd of this coming year, and the dog we've seen the dog seems to be in perfect shape. If he makes it to January 3rd, that dog will be 30 years old.
God bless that dog.
Yeah. I just gotta say, what you do is just amazing. Like, I need you should be teaching classes and courses. Like,
Yes.
like this is
Yes.
Well, we do. We answer about 1,100 people a week contacting us, and we just and I'll tell you something. I put my personal cell phone number printed on the back of every bag, because if somebody wants information, we don't have them call somebody who doesn't know the information like we know it. And as a result, I think I've got 14 million bags out there with my phone number on it. Okay. and people call us, and it is, I will tell you, it is kind of funny, because they'll be asking questions. Well, I'd like to know about how to feed, and I'd like to know this. And I start talking to them. They say, wait a minute, you sound very familiar. I said, oh, well, I don't know. They said, wait a minute, are you him? I said, what do you mean? Are you Burt Ward? I said, well, hold on, let me go look in the mirror. Yep, I happen to be him. Oh my God. Martha, come over here quick. He's on the phone. My superhero favorite. That all the time.
Oh, that's incredible.
Then I end up having to answer a lot of Batman questions before they finally get back to asking the questions that they called me about.
Well, you're in luck, Mr. Ward, because we're going to dive right into those same exact Batman questions right now. And we're going to,
All right.
The first to start us off is Mr. Christopher Petey. Chris, you got the first honor of asking the first Batman question.
Memories of your audition for Batman and Robin, and how it came to be, besides like what you already told us.
Well, actually, I basically told you everything from the time that I met a producer to sending me to the agent to hearing about trying out for the part, and then going to the screen test and meeting Adam and doing my lines with Adam, and then doing the on camera in that costume, and then getting the part later on. So I think I've covered it pretty clearly.
Wow, very cool. And, Chris, before you ask your additional question, though, Nancy, you had a question for Mr. Ward, right?
I did. I was admittedly curious about the costume, but you've answered that fully, because I gotta say, when I first saw the show, I thought, how many hours a day are those guys in those tights and those capes and those masks? And how does it feel at about 8 p.m.? And I think you kind of covered that for me.
Well, we start usually have to be on set around 7 a.m. You got it. Then you go to, first thing you go to makeup, and then you got to go to wardrobe. Then you put everything in, and then about 7:30, you're supposed to be available to work. And let me tell you something, it isn't the glamour that you think it might be. Yeah. Because what happens, at least in our case, I'm ready to work in my outfit, and I'm sitting there in a chair, and they're lighting a scene. Well, it takes 45 minutes to light that scene. Okay. And this camera doesn't work. Oh, that film has to be changed. Or, oh, wait a minute, we need a scrim over here. Or, okay, we need another light over here. Or pull a cable over there. All right. And after 45 minutes, you get up and you work for 30 seconds. 30 seconds.
Oh my.
And then you sit down and wait another 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And it goes on all day, every day, just like same thing. And so people say to me, well, boy, you have an opportunity to read a lot of books. And I said, actually, no. And they say, well, what do you mean? I said, well, when this first happened, I said to myself, all right, I'm going to go bring some books tomorrow. Well, after the first shot, okay, because I'm waiting to get started, 45 minutes, the first shot, I go sit down, and now I got my book, and I'm going to open the page. Oh, Mr. Ward, we got to have you in makeup for a minute. They got to check your makeup. Oh, okay. So I leave my book, go to the makeup, like 10 minutes, 15 minutes later, I come back and sit down. Oh, Mr. Ward, we need you in wardrobe. They have a question about this. They want to try on a new mask about it. Let me tell you something. You never have a moment's peace, but you're only working for 30 seconds about every hour. Yeah. That's what it's like. And you're in a costume that I'm telling you, man was not built for tights. It is horrendous to wear this thing. And for example, just little things that you never might think about. They have to wear these tights. Well, the wardrobe department, in their infinite wisdom, decided that, oh, let's use the heaviest tight we can use. Absolute thickest tight, because it'll just stand up better and it'll look better on camera. So they got the heaviest tight. But then they decided they didn't like the tint of color of that tight. In other words, it maybe needed a little bit more beige or a little bit more of this. So let's dye it. And when they dye those tights, all of those open spaces around the threads that normally when you put a tight on and stretch it, it has open air so that you can get it, they're all closed up. Now you after 5 minutes, you got a film of water between your leg and the tight because there's no open spaces, because every single thread has been dyed and thickened. And then when it comes to like my cape, instead of just a nice little yellow cape, oh no, we got to have double thick bridal satin. That's the heaviest. It's like a tarp. It's very heavy, like a furniture rug, and it goes on my neck back, and I'm pulling my neck back, so I have to tilt my head forward to compensate to keep my head straight. So finally, I said to them, "Wait a minute, this is unfair." So I had them put some snaps under the cape that snap to the vest. So when you snap it to your shoulders, it keeps it from pulling, and I had it snap down the back of my vest as well to take the weight of that heavy, heavy cape and pulling your head back. Then you have a mask, and they've got made out of wool. And the fibers of the wool irritate your skin. And after a half an hour with the mask on, now you look like you're a lobster because your face is all red from reacting to the itchiness of the wool. So I had to have them put satin on the inside of the mask so it wouldn't irritate my eyes. Then another problem with the mask is it touches your eyelashes. Let me tell you something. If you have something that on and off touches your eyelashes, every time it touches, it's a jolt. You can't have that. You need something more. So what do they have to do? Figure all how to, restructure the mask so it doesn't lean on the eyelashes. I mean, just every single thing you can imagine. And then just when you thought you're okay, then you've got all these things that are on the set that are very dangerous. The first week, every single day for the first 4 days, I went to the emergency hospital with second-degree burns, with a 2x4 breaking my nose, all of this stuff that you thought, well, wait a minute, why is this? And again, in my case, I had a big problem. They hired a stuntman for me, but they never used him, almost never. They only used him in the fight scenes and the long shots. Why? Because he didn't look like me. Well, why would you hire somebody to be my stuntman if he doesn't look like me? Couldn't find anybody else. Oh, so that means I got to do my own stunts. Yep. And all kinds of things that you wouldn't want to get into. I'll give you an example. We had a Catwoman scene, where these have real Bengal tigers. They're not pet tigers. They're real wild Bengal tigers. They can jump 15 feet. And they had a big steel cage, and they had a kind of like a plank over the top of the cage. I'm tied down with my arms at my sides, with my head hanging over the end of the plank, looking down at those tigers. I'm 12 feet above them. They can jump 15 feet. All right. I'm 12 feet above them. Now, the cameraman and the director are in a steel cage 10 feet above me. Oh, they're perfectly safe, and they're in a steel cage, right? But I'm down below where the cats can jump. And so now the director, who wants to get an exciting shot, he says, hey, to the animal handlers, okay? They say, hey, can you do something to make them look up at Robin? And so what do? They start tapping with these sticks. They use these sticks to kind of cause them to move in and out of the cages. They can't get in with them. No, they're wild. They're dangerously wild, but they use sticks to move them, to get them to go from one cage to another and stuff like that. So they started tapping around the perimeter right where I was to get them to look up. And sure enough, they're obviously looking up. They hear the sound, these tigers. And the director says, well, that's not really good enough. Can't you get them to do more? They said, well, I don't know what else we could do other than put meat above his head. Oh, that's a great idea. Let's put meat above his head and they'll really pay attention. Oh, did they pay attention? Okay. They like jumped up trying to get the meat. And I'm like pulling it with all my energy because I'm really tied down. This is not fake. And I'm like this and that. And thank lucky they didn't get me with their paw. It would have clawed my face off in one swipe. They didn't get me. And afterwards they said, oh, Burt, you were so realistic. You looked really frightened. So what do you think? I was. What are you talking about? You know, that was really dangerous. You know, I mean, these are the kinds of things, and you say, oh, that could never, nobody would ever do that on a movie set. And I got another one for you. Okay. There's another scene where they say, Burt, we want you to get up on the top of this sound stage. Do you guys know how big a sound stage is? They're like 60, 70, 80 feet up in the air. And how do you get up there? You got to go up on these rickety old wood steps inside the soundstage. And you go up a level and up a level, and you can see down below you. Oh my gosh, it's getting higher and higher and higher. And finally, I got on the top of the soundstage, and the director said, you know, you're right near the edge, but I want more drama. We're going to, after lunch, Burt, I hope you don't mind, but we've got two very strong stuntmen. They're going to hang you over the end of the soundstage upside down. And don't worry, they're very strong. They won't let you go. I said, I don't like that idea. I don't like that at all. Oh, but it's going to make it look so much better. So we have lunch. So after lunch, and I go back up those 100 steps, getting higher and higher, and you get on top of the soundstage. And so now they're ready to do this. And I said, wait a minute. I want you to get me a 1-inch thick rope, because they have all those kinds of stuff there. And I want you to tie it to my leg, and I want you to tie it to this pipe over here so that I don't take a chance of them dropping me. They said, oh, they can't. The guys are very strong. They're not going to let go of you. I said, wait a minute. We had fried chicken for lunch. What if their hands are still greasy and they slip their grip on my leg and I fall down to my death 80 feet below, hit the concrete with my head? No, I'm not doing this if you don't tie my leg to this thing. So that's what we did in order to get that shot. And it's that kind of thing that every day it's like, oh, how do I survive this? How do I make sure that I actually can go home in one piece?
Wow. Well, Boy Wonder doesn't begin to cover it. I think from all I know and from all I've heard, you were overqualified for the job.
Yeah, I think it must be a glutton for punishment too, you know, and so many things like this happen. But let me tell you, the studio was very smart. You know what they did? They took a giant multi-million-dollar life insurance policy on me. And I could swear by the last season, they were trying to collect on that policy. They put me in some really dangerous stuff.
Wow.
Tons of props for you doing that scene.
You are brave.
Yes.
Jackie Chan has nothing on you.
No, he does not. Jackie Chan does not have anything on Mr. Ward. Yeah.
Well, it was, you know, and thank goodness. I mean, there were some other times. I'll just tell you a small thing. You know, I got very sensitive about explosions. Okay, explosions can be very deadly, as you know. And on our set, we had a time where we're supposed to explode a gate about 5 feet away from us. And what they do is these special effects guys, they use an explosive material. Yeah, it's incredibly loud, and it is an explosion, but it's a smaller explosion than if you use, you know, dynamite or something. So they had this one explosion they were doing, and I said, hey, I'm only 6 or 7 feet away. I said, you know, how do I know it's not going to come at my face? Oh no, don't worry. We've got this guy. He's been 30 years doing special. We've got it all aimed down so the explosion will explode, but everything, all the material, the shrapnel type of material will go down, et cetera, et cetera. Nothing to worry about. Well, I knew exactly what time the explosion was going to go off because it was set where they said, and they control it, okay, from the side of the set. On a certain word, they're going to press that button. Well, you know, here I'm in the costume. I'm like 6, 7 feet away from the explosion, supposed to go straight down, but something told me, close your eyes. Something told me when the explosion comes, close your eyes. And, you know, with an explosion, all you have to do is close your eyes for a second, you know, and the explosion is over and you should be fine. But I wasn't. And they said, oh, you have nothing to worry about. And I closed my eyes, and it's a good thing I did. I would be blind today because that explosion didn't go just down. It came out, and it gave me second-degree burns on my eyelids. Can you imagine how painful your eyelid is, how sensitive that skin is? A second-degree burn. My eyes, I would be blind. They said, oh, well, it wasn't supposed to go that way. We can't figure that out. You know, we'll have to go back and figure. I said, you idiots, I'd be blind right now if I hadn't closed my eyes. And that's the kind of dangerous stuff that at the time, now I understand they're a lot more careful about stuff, but this is like, you know, 50 years ago.
Yeah, and it's horrible what happened to your eye, though. How long did it take for you to like to recover from that?
Well, weeks, because you just, you have to wait is the skin has to heal over and peel off, and then the skin underneath it. But I'd be blind if I hadn't closed my eyes. Yeah. And it's those kinds of things that, you know, that make you a little bit scared and a little bit cautious. And boy, before every explosion, I would ask him questions, and I made sure that I wasn't going to be at risk of something really bad happening.
You're absolutely right, and it's horrible that Hollywood did that because Hollywood was known for doing like those kind of risks back then. Like you said, like there was a story about like how the original Tin Man, Buddy Epson, like he actually got very ill because he inhaled the aluminum dust for the Tin Man costume, and he was in the hospital for like weeks.
Oh, we had that with the penguin gas. All these colored gases that we were in, smoke inhalation. We had an issue with that, and we had to have respirators and a second unit of ambulance people on the set to give us breathing things from inhaling the smoke.
It's awful. It's awful, sir. And I'm so glad you recovered from that. Like, and you're a true soldier. Like, this is why you're on screen. You're just as strong as you are on screen than you are like you are in off screen. Pardon me. I'm fumbling. I'm sorry.
That's fine. Thank you.
No problem, sir. Kwame, I believe you had the next question, right?
Memories of working with the late, great Adam West.
Yes.
Oh, well, Adam was like a personal friend. And I'll tell you something. You know, he was a wonderful man, a naturally funny man. And he had a very satirical sense of humor, which I found out the day I met him. I mean, here I meet the man. I'm going to read with him. We start reading the lines together, and just our comments to each other, within 5 minutes, the two of us were laughing, and we never stopped laughing for more than 50 years. I mean, we had a great relationship. And I'll tell you something. We did a few things that had not been done in television before. For example, back in the 60s, if you watched a television show, you as the audience are really not involved with the show. I mean, you see good guys or bad guys, and you just watch them, but you're kind of third party. You're not part of it. Or if it was a medical show, it's the same kind of thing. You're watching somebody that's sick, and then you're watching doctors trying to get them well, but you're not involved. What Adam and I tried to do is that we tried to reach through the television screen and grab those viewers, especially the kids, and bring them right into Batman. And by the things we did and said, and by the inflections and the way we moved, and everything was targeting our audience. And kids would be watching our show, and they got their capes on with clothespins, and they're jumping off their couches, and the parents remember the nostalgia of the comic book. And the college kids and teenagers back in the 60s, nobody wanted to watch television, not that were that age. They want to be out cruising the restaurants on a Friday night, the drive-ins, and honking their horns and revving their engines. So to get them to watch Batman, we had this campy style of double meanings, of saying things that were written, but with a much more different implication. And as a result of that, and we said some things that were very funny. During that time in the 60s, kids were irreverent. In other words, a kid would rather be punished for a year than to tell his parents, oh, you're right. You would never admit to one of your parents they were right about anything. It was just like the worst thing on earth. And when I would have that line, gosh, Bruce, you're right. Oh my God, these college kids, they would get in the dorm, from the dorm to the cafeteria to watch our show an hour and a half early to get a seat just to watch Batman Tuesdays and Thursdays nights. Okay. And they would go crazy from the stuff that we would do because we purposely reached out, and the implications we gave, there were some of them very, very suggestive, which of course that made them love Batman more. That campy style that we did.
Incredible. And like I said, you nailed the role, sir. Like, especially there was nobody that could have done the Robin role like you. You were just best suited for that.
Yeah, I think I really was. And, I enjoyed doing it. And for me, I just had a lot of fun when I wasn't going to the hospital,
Yeah. Damn Hollywood.
I gotta ask this though. On Adam West. When he got into the role of Mayor West on Family Guy, would you say it's probably like one of the best roles that suited him?
Well, I thought he was very good. He had, that was right up his alley with the humor, but so was Batman. He applied his style of humor. And well, let me give you an example. I'll give you a little bit of a racy thing. There was a scene where in the third year, we brought Batgirl into the Batcave. And for whatever reason, we wanted to show her the Batcave. And so we showed her the Batcave, but on taking her out, because we didn't want her to know where the Batcave was or who the true identity of Batman and Robin, we gave her a whiff of bat gas. Okay, so this is a scene, short scene, supposed to be just a quick scene where we're in the Batmobile, we're about to leave the Batcave. Batman is behind the wheel, he's driving, I'm in the passenger side, and Batgirl is in between us, like on the center console there. And I'm supposed to have the line something like, gosh, Batman, Batgirl is very pretty. And Batman's supposed to have a line, well, I'm glad you noticed, Robin, it shows you're growing up, or something like that, whatever. Simple. Well, without telling me, Adam decided to mess up his lines. And every time you have a take, you got to understand, there's like 30 to 80 people on a set, and they're paid a lot of money. And it's like I think it's like $10,000 every 10 minutes, or 30,000 every 10 minutes that it costs. So when you have all these people on the set and they have to get everybody quiet, ring a bell, they have to roll sound, they have to roll picture, because this is filmmaking. This is not with a television camera. This is with a 35 millimeter movie camera. And they finally get to where they say action, and then you mess up the tape. They got to stop it all. You got to reset, check the lights. It could be 5 minutes between, and you're talking money being lost. So what Adam did, he wanted to do something different, and he messed up 10 takes. 10 takes. The director said, if you mess up any more takes, you're going to put me out of the business because I'm not going to be able to deliver on time. So Adam knew what he was doing. He knew that he had got him at a point where this next take, he can just about say anything, and they're going to let it go, right? They just got to move on. So here comes the same scene, and I'm saying to myself, Adam doesn't make mistakes like that. And the thing is that we had such a rapport. He wouldn't tell me when he was going to do something. He'd just do it, which makes my reaction to it totally, just like anybody would react. It was surprise. So here comes the 10th, 11th take, and I say, gosh, Batman, Batgirl is very pretty. And he says, I'm glad you noticed, Robin. It shows the oncoming thrust of manhood. Thrust of manhood. Nobody understood that because they were in a panic. They didn't listen. They just heard that there wasn't stopping the thing. Okay, great, wrap, move on to the next set. Okay, now 6 weeks later, now the show has just aired, and we're called into the production room office because censors are there. And the censors proceed to tell us, you can't say things like that. You can't do that on national television. We have broadcast requirements. We have, you violated this. And they fined the studio like thousands of dollars for this happening. And we just, just an innocent mistake. I had missed 10 takes. And the words, I don't know, it was so hot in the costume. You know, I mean, whatever, you know, covered it. But that was the beginning of, over time, constantly the censors were coming back. The implications were very, very strong. And they were saying, you can't do that. Oh my gosh, it went on and on and on. And that's part of what actually brought in a larger audience because, oh yeah, I mean, the word got out and people now, we got to watch and see what happens tonight. Maybe something's going to be really risque tonight type of deal.
That's incredible. That's just incredible. Adam
the FCC. To think you'd actually mess with the FCC like that. He was like the old school Howard Stern.
Oh, word.
Yes, right. But it wasn't so blatant, you know, and it was always in a Batman style where you never knew if he was just accidental or he was intentional. It's a very sophisticated comedy, level of comedy. It's not just like, obviously, you know, what's, you know, some disc jockey says that it's just, they try to use big bad words to make up for the fact that they can't be interesting by just being able to talk regular. So we did things in a campy style, which was the total style of Batman. And you're always left not sure, well, did he really mean that? Or was that just an accident? But boy, that sure got my eyes open. That's the kind of thing we did every single episode, everything we could put in. And some things got caught. The directors were then told to watch us more closely. We had a scene with the Siamese human knot where Batgirl, Robin, and Batman were villains put us together, where we're all kind of our arms and legs and everything entangled with each other in a Siamese human knot, and we're trying to get out. Well, there was only supposed to be 2 lines where Batman says, Robin, if you can lean to the left, you know, I think I can pull out my right hand. I say, okay, Batman. Well, Adam and I started improvising. And he would say things like, can you wiggle your right ear when I lean over to the left? And I would say this. And after 30 seconds, the director says, wait a minute, cut. There's not dialogue for this. Where does it say this in the script? It's supposed to be a 6-second scene. It's been 30 seconds. What's going on here? Oh, gee, we forgot. Sorry about that. And so as a result, everybody always watching us. Oh, we got to watch these guys. They're going to pull a fast one. But let me tell you something. When we half of them got by, and I'll tell you something, it actually helped the ratings because people knew to watch for something. They didn't know what it was going to be. They didn't know if it was going to happen or when it would happen, but it could happen. And that's what really perked our audience.
That's incredible and fun. And Chris, before you ask your next question, though, Nancy, you had another question for Mr. Ward?
Yeah, you know, remembering Biff, Bam, Zowie, you know, Pow, all of that. And you know, the wit of the show and the fun of the show and the drama of the show when you surrender to a story like that, which is so much fun. That was content, which is a word we seem to use a lot now when talking about writing. It was content written for the sake of entertainment. And the technology did its best to meet the requirement of the show. And I'm curious what you feel about what's happening in entertainment today, where it's almost like writers and performers and producers are almost being asked to create for the technology. And I'm just curious if you have any thoughts on that. And second, part B would be, aren't you glad you did what you did when you did it?
Well, yes and no. I'm glad. I have no regrets. I love what I did, and I would have preferred not to visit the emergency hospital so often. And actually, I got to be pretty friendly with the doctor that was there all the time. He kept saying to me, "Gosh, really, there's got to be an easier way for you to make a living than this, But to answer your first part of your question, Adam and I created something that no one had ever done before. And what we created is still used in every action film that you see it in the movie theaters. And I'm going to tell you what it is. There was a scene in our show where we went into a warehouse looking for the Joker, and all of a sudden we're confronted with these, 8 big guys, and they're there to fight. They just come out of the shadows and drop down into the pit. They're just all of a sudden there's 8 guys, right? And I had a line on Batman. I said, "Gosh, Batman, there's 8 of them against 2 of us. Odds in our favor," right? Because there was only 8 of them, right? So now that kind of satire in the middle of something that is potentially dangerous, you look now in every Warner Brothers, DC movie, every Marvel movie, right in the middle of the greatest action, these 2 characters will say something. Take a look even at the movie's Bad Boys, where the 2 guys are being at shootout and it's deadly. And one guy will say, "If we ever get out of this alive, I'm never coming over to your house again." I mean, there is this comedy that right in the middle of the greatest danger. We created that. That is in every movie today. Yeah. So that's the answer to your first question. Yeah, Secondly, I'm still very much in the movie business. My wife and I are very fortunate. We have a very big home. We also have our own recording studio. We have our own animation studio, and we're right now completing a soundstage right on our property where we're going to produce our own movies, and we're going to be doing state-of-the-art. There is state-of-the-art 3D with people that, we've all seen some of these movies where you can say, "Oh, well, that's a 3D person. That's not a real person." But let me tell you something. You ask about technology. There is technology there. And it's not just the AI. It's not, AI is very powerful. Well, don't misunderstand me. But there's already technology that we can create characters that you cannot tell are not real. Mm-hmm. You cannot tell. For all intents and purposes, you would believe they're real. Absolutely believe they're real. And everything that is said, every motion, everything is so realistic that, and this is the technology we want. And we're doing our own programming, our own feature films, our own TV series, and we're using this technology along with Dolby Atmos sound, which is immersive sound, where you feel it's all coming in you, around you, above you. And Dolby Vision, which is high quality vision. We have all our own equipment. We have everything we need internally to make our own television shows and feature films, including our own funding. We don't have to go to anybody for anything.
Oh, that is wonderful. Thank you.
Ian, you ask your next question.
All right. Yeah, I'm like, I need to move. I've been sitting in this bed for like an hour and 10 minutes. I used to be in wrestling, bro.
I know.
Something you didn't bring up, Burt, that I thought was pretty cool was the I would call it the walking up the side of a building gag. I thought that was pretty revolutionary.
Yeah, it was. The reason why we did that is that there were so many stars that wanted to be guests on our show, and those that had families, and especially if they had children, they were being bombarded by their kids. "Oh, you got to get on Batman. You got to get on Batman." And these actors, very famous actors and actresses from all over the industry, they wanted to be on our show because not just because it was the #1 show in the entire world, actually #1 and #2 in the entire world, our show. Okay. But besides that, they wanted to be on it because when they would play a part, whether it was a good guy or a bad guy in the movies they were doing, they were always limited by what the character was. But on Batman, the bad guys could be the ultimate super bad of the bad, where they could be, as an actor, they could take it and make it as bigger than life. And every one of those actors wanted the freedom to do that, because normally they never have the freedom to do anything bigger than the limitation of the character. So here Batman offered this great time. Well, now there's not enough roles. Everybody in Hollywood. So what are they going to do? How are they going to get all these actors on the show? So what did they do? They said, okay, let's create a scene that we do in every episode, and where Batman and Robin are walking up the outside of a building and a window opens, and it could be a different celebrity every show. And we did that. Our first celebrity was none other than Sammy Davis Jr. And then we had, we had Jerry Lewis, we had Don Ho, we had Colonel Klink, we had Lurch, we had Dick Clark. I mean, Betty White. I mean, we had every week, 120 episodes of all these people that were guesting on our show, and they all had the best time. So that's how we got more celebrities on, because everybody wanted to be on Batman. You've got to understand, you guys are very young. You weren't there. But at that time, it was, when I say the number 1 and number 2 in the entire world, our ratings were greater than Super Bowl. We had women that had their hair styled in a Batman haircut. There was every product a child or adult could have, from clothing to kids' underoos, and Batman diapers, and oh my gosh, everything you could imagine. Batmobile beds, motorized Batmobiles that you could, 1/6 size that you could, as a display. All these kinds of memorabilia, because it was the number 1 show, and people all around the world. We had more than 400 million people watching every episode worldwide. There was only 100 and some odd million people in the US at the time. We had 400 million worldwide watching Batman. This was during the Vietnam War. We actually did recordings. The US government came to us, and we did recordings where it was played to the North Vietnamese. And there was all kinds of stuff we did, and we gladly did it. And so Batman was, at the time, it was the greatest hit in history in terms of television.
Oh yeah. Well, being that you've played Robin on a lot of different projects over 50 years, what would you say was your favorite part of getting to play him?
Was doing the series, because we could do just about anything we wanted within the confines of the script. I love the fight scenes. I'll give you a little piece of trivia. At the time where I lived in the same complex of a very famous martial artist. His name was Bruce Lee. And Bruce Lee and I used to spar together. We used to fight
Green Hornet
together.
himself.
Yes, this is before the Green Hornet. And another piece of trivia was that when he got the part of Kato on the Green Hornet, obviously Bruce became the most famous cinema martial artist in the world. Probably never be equaled again. Most famous. And piece of trivia for you, his first fight scene of his career on film was fighting me on Batman. That was the first one time he ever did it. And it was a scene, it was a show where the Green Hornet and Kato came to Gotham City. Batman and Robin thought they were bad guys. They didn't realize they were good guys. And Kato and the Green Hornet thought that Batman and Robin were bad guys. And as a result, we had this fight scene. But because it was the same executive producer, and because he was launching the Green Hornet that next fall, everything had to come out and that was equal. And also, they never wanted any real violence where children would see blood or really where somebody's really hurt. On Batman, we had bigger than life violence, such as somebody picking up a chair and crashing it over somebody's head. Batman would fall to the ground, and 2 seconds later, he's up again. In other words, nobody ever really got hurt, and that was the style that we did on Batman.
You know, it's definitely unlike my days in pro wrestling. If you got hurt, it was accidental. It wasn't on. There was nothing on purpose, so that's good.
Right.
So we got two pro wrestlers here. We got Darius and we got Ian. Next question, I believe. Who had that?
So what are some other funny stories you have as playing Robin?
Well, there's, it was working with all these great actors and actresses. That was a real pleasure. And there were funny scenes. I mean, we had a scene, well, we did a whole show with, some of the most famous actors of all, you know what I mean? And scenes with people like Cliff Robertson, who played Shame, and some of the great Shakespearean actors that George Saunders that played Mr. Freeze, and we had great actors, and there were funny scenes because these actors, every one of them, they wanted to be bigger, and they wanted that freedom of creating their evil villain, so it was just so many different events and scenes where we had to break into the villains' headquarters, which they always had it on an angle, where it said villains hideout, right? Well, what villain would have a sign that says their hideout, right? It's just
right?
that kind of kind of craziness, you know what I mean? And but there were lots of funny, and all, of course, the show was written to be comedy. So we played it seriously, but there were, we were put in giant birthday cakes, and every kind of crazy thing that you can have, that you can imagine. Just lots of funny scenes.
Incredible, sir. And Ian, you had a follow-up question, right? Ian,
wait a minute. I'll give you one more. Wait a minute. I'm going to give you one more.
Okay.
Vincent Price. You know who Vincent Price is? One of the great actors of all time. Okay. So Vincent Price played Egghead. I'll give you a funny thing that happened. It wasn't too funny for me. Is that at the end of the show, Batman comes in and rescues Robin, who has been captured by Egghead, Vincent Price's Egghead, and he breaks into their hideout. And Vincent Price, Egghead's got me around the neck with a neck hold here. And when Batman comes in, Vincent Price as Egghead, he picks up an egg, and in between their dialogue, each time that Batman and Egghead are saying something to each other, he cracks a real egg on my head, right? So, a real egg, right? And so now they thought, Adam and Vincent Price thought, hey, let's have some fun at Burt's expense. So what did they do? They messed up like 7 or 8 takes. And each one of those, I had 4 eggs broken on my head, real eggs. And now you got that sticky egg substance going down the back of my neck, into my cape, into my shorts, on my hands, my face. Okay. And they thought it was so funny. They just keep breaking. So let me tell you, and when they finally stopped, okay, my part was when I got away from Egghead, I was supposed to pick up a half a dozen eggs and throw them at him. Well, I was really angry. I picked up a whole dozen eggs, and I went over, instead of throwing at him, I hit him so hard on his egghead that it bent his egg on his head. It tilted the egg on his head because I hit him so hard with that. Because that let me tell you something. You might think, oh, it doesn't bother you with an egg broken over your head. And it's not that painful, but after you get about 7 or 8 or 10 or 12 eggs broken on your head, it starts to hurt. And now I'm riled up. And, and this was all because they were having fun at my expense.
Wow. That's so wild.
Oh, man.
Ian, your next question?
Out of all the episodes you filmed for the original Batman series, do you have a specific one that stands out in your memory?
Yeah, every one that I went to the hospital from, that stands out, definitely. No, can I tell you something? 120 of them. That's a lot. That's a lot. And on any given one, if I sat down and thought about it, I could start to, I remember that scene. I remember that. And that thing happened and this and that. But, it's over time, you see it as a total experience. And and of course, and then that doing all 120 episodes followed by 7,000 personal appearances around the United States, signing 8.5 million autographs for 25 years of my life. For 25 years of my life after Batman, I went to 300 cities a year. Out of 365 days, I went to 300 cities a year signing autographs. Can you imagine for 25 years living out of a suitcase like that?
And you never got carpal tunnel from that, right? From all that writing?
Well, let me tell you, you could easily get it. You would get it if you had a ballpoint pen. But when you use a Sharpie, a felt tip pen, you don't have to hold on it tight. It can be very loose in your hand, and it just signs so much easier. But if I had to use a ballpoint pen, and actually my forearm on my right side is larger than on my left arm because of signing so many. 8.5 million autographs. Think about that.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Like I would.
Yeah, that's a lot of reps to get in.
Well, I did want to say I'm getting ready to take off. I'm not I'm not as young as I used to be. I got to get up and move and need to use the restroom. But Burt, thank you so very much for giving us all the time of day, and especially Pete, thanks for letting me jump in on you.
Anytime, brother. It. Takes care, and you take care of yourself, man.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you, sir.
Take care.
See you.
Good to have you here.
Bye.
The next question we have, Darius, you had it.
I want to ask you about your appearance on Futurama, how that got set up.
Oh, okay. Well, for voiceovers, I did a lot of voiceovers, including Futurama and let's see, what else I did.
The Simpsons
was the Flintstones. Yeah, that episode was called Large Marge. I was on the Flintstones, and some of these other ones that are very funny that are on. It's the cartoon channel at night becomes a different channel, becomes a little bit of a racy channel, and I've done a lot of stuff like that. Various shows that and actually, plus in addition to being on Batman, I starred in 40 features for television. So, and I played anyway from being a good guy like the Pope to a satanic devil. So I've had a chance to play just about every character that I would want to.
Can I say also to Mr. Ward that I absolutely loved your appearance on The Simpsons. As a longtime Simpson fan, or Mark, I always I loved your cameo in that episode, Large Marge. I remember it came out in 2002, and I can actually say your line verbatim what you was, because I remember Bart and Milhouse were watching the original Batman and Robin cartoon series,
right?
And they had you and Adam West tied up to the carousel because the main villain was Krusty the Clown, and then I remember you saying in character, you said, "Holy G-forces, Batman! The blood is rushing to my head," and then Adam West goes, "That's right, young lad. We'll soon blush ourselves to death."
There you go. We had a lot of funny stuff on Batman. I'll tell you, the kind of crazy things that audiences love. We'd be like, for example, outside chasing these villains, and these villains would run across the street. And I'd start to run across the street, and Batman said, "Wait a minute, Robin. We have to follow the law. Use the crosswalk." Well, the crosswalk is 20 feet down the road, and then use the crosswalk and then go chase those villains. Or we'd pull up the Batmobile and we'd jump on, and I start to run. Wait a minute, Robin, I've got to follow the law, put some money in the meter, I mean, those kinds of very, very funny stuff. And people they just loved it. They love that kind of stuff, It's all the kind of stuff, all tongue-in-cheek, campy style, and people love that.
I agree. And I believe Nancy had another question, right? Ms. Magistine?
Yeah, I was curious. I imagine, going back to the original series, I imagine it's very difficult to isolate a favorite episode or a particular guest star that you were hoping would come back again and again. So I won't put you on the spot unless there's something you want to say about that. But I'm curious, did you find yourselves in a position, you and Adam, of wanting to create certain storylines that maybe hadn't happened yet, or expand on things that had happened. Were there times where you were in a position to maybe suggest, hey, what if Robin, in this episode where he meets the Joker and blah, 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 is there something that you may have wanted to expand on? And did you guys ever find yourselves behind closed doors asking those questions?
Let me answer that. We had a problem. It took 6 days to make each half hour. Yeah. We did 120 half hours. Yeah. 6 days. We were having to shoot 2 shows at the same time. Yeah. So we never had time, the luxury of saying, oh, let's go over to the production office and make some suggestions. We were always running between sound. We're on at Desi Lou Culver soundstage 15 and 16, and they'd have one show on one soundstage and one show on the other being shot simultaneously. And you've got 2 scripts that you're trying to memorize, and you're running between, the back and forth, and it was hectic. And then now that's during the week. Now on weekends, we had appearances booked every weekend. Where like my first appearance, to give you an idea, Adam had gone to New York and he filled Shea Stadium, and he put on an act as Batman filling Shea Stadium. Okay, I made my first appearance up north near Seattle in Tacoma, Washington, at a super large mall where at the time they had wild animals where you could shop. And there would be an actual tiger in a cage behind. You couldn't get to it, but there's a real tiger there, or a real bear, or whatever. I mean, and so in my particular case, I had not made any personal appearances. And my first personal appearance was at this place. It was about 3 months after Batman came on, okay? And again, remember, I'm at the studio all the time. I'm not out there where people, I don't really, other than you hear, oh, the ratings are great or this or that. I'm not there where you're feeling the pulse of what people really feel. So at this first personal appearance of my career, by myself, I'm going to the state of Washington, and the people putting on the appearance, they hired the University of Washington football team, first 11 guys, offense and defense, as kind of like, I don't know, not so much bodyguards, but just to keep control of things. Because by myself, on my first appearance on a Saturday and Sunday at this mall, they handed out 302,000 raffle tickets. 300,000 people were there. People were sleeping on the street. You couldn't get within 6 blocks of the mall because people were camping on the streets. And this is appearing by myself, okay? Wow. And I'll tell you a funny thing that happened, a kind of a little memory there, all right? So here I am. I had to get dressed on one end of this mall. I had to walk 1/4 mile to the other end to where I'm making this appearance, okay? And I have all these giant football players on both sides, all these guys, right? And I'm dressed as Robin, and I'm walking along in this, direction towards where I'm going to say hi to people. There's no time to sign autographs. Forget it. There was just pandemonium. But it was funny. There were 2 elderly ladies that were coming in my direction, going away from where I was going. And apparently they hadn't seen Batman. And they saw me in this costume, okay? And one lady turned to the other and said, huh, damn hippie. They thought that I was a hippie because of the costume I wore. They didn't understand about Batman and Robin or superheroes or anything. They just thought I was a hippie because, again, this is the 60s, right?
Damn. That's not even like I don't think it's even like the contemporary depiction of a hippie. So what were they even thinking? How'd they not know what a hippie looked like? You were
well, at the time,
didn't have long hair, you didn't have a
60s,
beard?
well, no, wait a minute. No, they didn't always have to have a beard. In the 60s, okay, they would have these very colorful costumes, colorful outfits, you know, bright pinks and bright greens and blues.
Oh, yeah.
So anybody that was wearing something that was bright, okay, that's one thing. Secondly, you know, some people had beards, some had long hair, some people had unusual things. They dressed like they were out of the, you know, Shakespearean period or some time in history. In other words, it wasn't uncommon to see people who were in that category as uniquely dressed. You know what I mean? And so therefore, it was understandable to me why they would look at me and see, you know, well, here's somebody, look at that costume. And you know what I mean? And all of this stuff that they would think in their mind. It was that, and again, this is the 60s. This is the flower children. This is the period of free love. This is a whole different world than we're world in today. It was a simpler world. It was a kinder world. It was a safer world than what we have today. And it was a healthier world. You didn't have to worry about illness so much and things like that. You know, and I kind of feel today for the youth growing up, they're growing up in a really tough world, you know, and I feel bad about it because I grew up in a world where, you know, like the worst thing that could happen is that somebody in school smoked a cigarette. Okay, that was like, you know, getting ready for the ultimate punch, or there was a fight. There was no things like guns or knives or stabbings or murders and rapes. And I mean, it was just a different world. And it was a time when people were happier. They saw the goodness in life, and it was such a simple time that isn't that way anymore. So you know, I have the opportunity to have lived both times, and it is enriching, and it makes you constantly think about things in life and where you want to go and the things you want to emphasize and the choices you want to make this a better place for all of us.
Amen, sir. Amen. And
Thank you.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
Absolutely.
Agreed.
Chris, you had a question, right?
Certainly. Yeah. So, memories working on SpongeBob SquarePants as a young barnacle boy, and your thoughts on the idea of show paying homage to Batman and Robin, and with Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy, respectively.
Right. Well, as you know, there was a Barnacle Boy, and there was you know, the characters. We were the younger versions of that on the show, and that was fun. You know, it was fun doing these voiceovers. But I personally, I like the on-camera work. I like where you're really, you know, because the recordings, you go really into a sound booth and you just simply say your lines. And, you know, I mean, they can be funny and they can be entertaining, but it's not like where you're really getting out and using your craft to really make something that is totally different and you, and where you can bring all of your talents together and try to make an impression on things that, you know, that are meaningful. So for me, I enjoyed doing voiceover. I mean, the last two movies for Warner Brothers, I portrayed Robin as a voiceover in these two animated features. One of them was voted the best animated feature, superhero feature of the year. But for me, I like the in being in front of the camera. I like if I'm going to act, and I also like now the opportunity to not just be an actor, but to be the director, to be the producer, to be the set decorator when you start doing things digitally, where you have an open book and you can create anything that your mind, you know, can generate.
Well said, sir.
With the amount of time you pay in show business, yeah, that's definitely generated a lot of prestige for you, and you would definitely know what you're doing by this point.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know, I'll tell you, I hate to say it, but the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. Yeah, and it's humbling, because when you see people out there that are really good at their craft, whether it be somebody that is a cameraman or somebody that is a gaffer, or somebody in costuming, I mean, you really appreciate the dedication these people have made in their lives to reach this level of success. So I have great appreciation for the crew. You know, at the time I was doing Batman, and you know, here I am, this youngest guy on the set. The closest person, I was like 21, and the closest person to me was Adam, who was 38. So he's like 17, 18 years older than me. And then all the rest of the crew, these are guys that were the best in Hollywood. They're all in their 50s and 60s. So I was pretty much alone all the time. And so it was, for me, it was an adjustment, because part of my, I guess, late childhood or whatever, or young manhood, was, you know, living on a coal soundstage every single day. You know, it was a real interesting experience. And then, of course, just the opposite of that, on weekends when you go out and, you know, people would try to get into a fist fight over your drinking cup, or I mean, just the people were so crazy to want to shake your hand or touch you or this or that, or just say hi. And so you go from total isolation to total, you know, like just being swarmed. And it's a lot of extremes. And that's what happens when you have something that's very successful. You go from the extreme of one direction to the extreme of the other.
Before we conclude, sir, we all just want to give our final questions and final comments, and then we're gonna wrap up. So Darius, you want to take the charge first? You have any final comments for Mr. Ward?
Oh, honestly, I just want to say, I just want to praise you once again for just what you do for dogs and what you do for animals. We literally sit here and talk to you all day, but I just wanted to say, just simply thank you.
Well, and thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Kwame, final comments for Mr. Ward?
Oh, my mum was here right now, even though she's kind of in bed right now. She would be going crazy to see you, because she absolutely loves Batman. She did grow up with it in the 60s.
Yeah, well, tell her she has excellent taste.
Oh, I will. Don't worry.
Chris, final comment?
Yeah, it's definitely surreal to finally be talking to you, Mr. Ward, because I remember as far back when I was like 5 years old, actually watching Batman, and never in my wildest dreams did I ever think I'd have the privilege to even talk to you.
Well, it's a pleasure to meet you and talk to you too. You know, it was an amazing trip. It's been an amazing experience. It's been an amazing life. You know, there you go. There's a young crime fighter behind you.
Yeah, there you go.
And yeah, I've had a lot of fun doing this, and it's fun talking to people and sharing some of these stories, because those are memories that you don't forget. You know, they're there, and it's just a matter of pulling them out when you want to share them.
Absolutely. Nancy, your final comments?
Oh, I just have to tell you, I want to thank you for your vast body of work, going way back to when you first put on a cape. And thank you also for what you do for animals and for the awareness raising about the food supply. I think we need to hear a lot more about it. And I thought you were a superhero before, and now you're even more of one to me. And
thank you. That's very kind. It's a pleasure. And I enjoyed your questions. I think they were very perceptive. And I'm sure that you're going to do very well, because you are asking the right questions, and you have to get someplace by first understanding what you're dealing with. And I appreciate the questions you asked. They were very perceptive.
Well, I'm such a huge fan, and I just have to stop there because I'll gush in a very embarrassing way, but I just so deeply appreciate you. Thank you.
Actually, I get my cohort here on the show for just a brief moment, because apparently he has something to say.
Go ahead.
Hey, what's up?
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, what's up, baby? You know what we doing?
Okay, so with it, you finished, Chris?
Yeah, I guess that's it.
Okay.
Did you just want to? You good? All right.
So my final comment for you, Mr. Ward, and I'm going to keep it short and sweet, is first of all, thank you for not only an amazing interview, but also for the amazing moments you gave us, all of us, watching Batman and Robin. You're not only a legend, an icon, you are in short, the man. And I said this when I had Nancy on the show. I said that I'm the type of guy that I'm so grateful with the guest stars I have. I would literally go up and hug you if I actually met you in person. I would hug every single one of my guest stars just to show my gratitude. And not only that, but I would also like to say also that you have this incredible gift, and it's unfortunate that you don't have those like real superpowers like Robin did, but you have this one incredible gift where you can take a 33-year-old fan and bring him way down here and make him feel like that 5-year-old watching Batman and Robin again. And
well, thank you. That's it was a lot of fun, and I love the industry, and I loved Adam West. He was a wonderful man. I wish you could have had him on your show. He would keep you laughing. He kept me laughing for 50 years. He was a great guy, and I pay the greatest of respect to him. But I want to thank you for allowing me to be on your show. And I will conclude by saying is what we said on Batman. To the Batmobile!
Yes! Have a good night, sir. It was such a pleasure and honor.
It was an
Thank you.
honor.
I'll say goodbye for now.
Definitely good.
Goodbye.
Yeah.
Take care.